Population. In more urban areas, there was a large population of unmarried women. However, most women were married to men, so the population distribution between males and females were about equal. Women were typically housewives, but most often became widows after 25 years of marriage, and also became the leader of the households until they died. The men typically made most of their money, but the entire family had a job in helping the farms. There were 20,000 people in 1700, and life expectancy was just over 40 years.
Government. The Pennsylvania colony had the first framed government structure. Rights were granted to inhabitants forever. There were 72 representatives chosen by people as a council, and after 7 years, these members had to leave the council. The governor presides over this council, and the council proposes laws to assembly. The governor and the council ensure the existence of public schools, and the General Assembly of Representatives are chosen by the people to vote on laws proposed by the council, and this General Assembly cannot exceed more than 200 people. The governor and the council manage court and justice systems. The governor appoints judges, treasurers, and sheriffs. The council cannot make any laws to diminish the rights in the frame of government, and we had some blue laws that prohibited some extravagant behavior. As for voting rights, only Christians can vote or hold office, and democratic elements of the Pennsylvania colony included an appointed body of representatives, a three-part government, and a constitution-like document known as the Frame of Government of Pennsylvania.
Culture. So in Pennsylvania, religion-wise, there was a large amount of Quakers, but they were accepting of all, so they allowed Catholics, Lutherans, and Jews to move into their colony. Population-wise, English were the dominant portion of the Pennsylvania population. However, thousands of Germans came to Pennsylvania, and by the time the Revolution had started, Germans were a third of the population. And then around 1717, the Scots-Irish came to Pennsylvania because of the hardships they faced in Ireland. And then by 1776, they had become 1/4 of the Pennsylvania population. And even though the Quakers did not support slavery, in 1730 there were about 4,000 slaves that the non-Quaker population had purchased. By 1790, there were around 10,000 African Americans, but over half had already gained their freedom. And then in 1780, Pennsylvania passed their Gradual Abolition Act, which gradually eliminated slavery within the colonies. And then in Pennsylvania, there was also smaller portions of Irish, Welsh, French, Huguenot, Jew, Dutch, Swede, and more groups that were a part of their population. And so some of the values were that they were accepting of all, they allowed women to participate in church and become ministers in the Quaker church, and they objected to war and did not participate in military services, as well as the fact that they were all very family-oriented.
Time to rise and shine. You deserve an oat of the highest caliber. Won't you try my wheat? Come get some grains, friend. My barley's top of the shelf. I'm a man of my word.
Economy. Farming was a major industry in Pennsylvania. Corn and wheat were the main crops, and livestock included cattle and pigs. Pennsylvania was often referred to as the breadbasket colony because it grew so many crops. Its other industries included production of iron ore, lumber, and textiles. Iron ore products such as plows, tools, kettles, nails, and other items were exported to England. Pennsylvania had fertile land for farming and timberland. Iron ore and coal were also important natural resources. The geography of Pennsylvania included mountains, plateau areas, and lowlands along Lake Erie. The plateau areas had very fertile soil that was good for farming.
Native population. The main tribes living in and around the Pennsylvania colony were the Erie, the Iroquois, Lenape, Munshi, Shawnee, and Susquehannock tribes. Pennsylvania was peaceful with the natives from its founding to 1754, and that's when conflict began to arise. The 7 Years' War, which primarily occurred in Pennsylvania, ended William Penn's vision of a peaceful nation, and from this point on, the relations between the Native Americans and Europeans changed. Pennsylvania became one of the areas with the most interracial violence in the American colonies. However, the Eastern Treaty of 1758 officially ended Pennsylvania's war with the Native Americans, but relations from this point on remained strained and sometimes violent. For example, in 1763, a group of Scots-Irish settlers known as the Paxton Boys massacred a group of unarmed Native Americans. By 1790, no Native American nations had possessions of their homelands within Pennsylvania's borders. As for a number of natives, there were about 15,000 natives before the Europeans arrived, and then as the colonists moved to Pennsylvania, the Native American population decreased from disease. And these natives also began to be forced to move west because of the colonists taking their land.
10 tools for survival. So some cultural tools in the Pennsylvania colony would be the Quaker Bible, because Quakers were the predominant religious group in Pennsylvania and were very church-focused, so their Bible would be very important to have. And another one would be the horn books, because education was important and they wanted their children to be able to read the Bible, so horn books would allow them to learn. And then also quilts, because they were used to keep warm and they were seen as a calming pastime for the women of the colony. Now moving on to economic tools, horses were very important because they would help with transportation as well as farming. Plows, because they make it easier to sow seed and loosen and turn the soil, as well as an axe, because it can be used to cut down lumber and do everyday tasks that they have in their home. Then moving on to practical, we have a sewing kit in case clothing get damaged or if they need to make new clothing. Candles, because they are an easily accessible source of light, as well as herbs, because they can be used for medicinal purposes and cooking. And then a modern day one we chose was vaccines, because disease was such a widespread problem for colonists and Native Americans, and this would help to decrease the death rate from such diseases as smallpox or influenza. Superlatives. So the most important document in Pennsylvania was created in 1862 when William Penn wrote the frame of government of Pennsylvania, and basically it was a constitution that established the government and laws for Pennsylvania. Now, the biggest troublemakers were the Paxton Boys, and they were Scots-Irish who got angry and then slaughtered 20 Native Americans in 1763. Our most valuable player is William Penn, because he created this holy experiment of Pennsylvania. Our biggest obstacle or challenge we thought would be disease, because smallpox and influenza were especially common and killed many of the early colonists as well as colonists later in the time period. Biggest asset is the love for all and the Quaker values that motivated people to move to Pennsylvania because of how accepting they were.